So let's start with 3D Max, and I'm gonna use a box as a block, and we're going to set the length and other dimensions. For the length, we go with 20 centimeters and 10 centimeters for the width and 5 centimeters for height. This is almost an ordinary block. Okay, let's start with a parametric array. We use right click and then we choose create parametric array command. The first thing we need to set is the type of the array. Basically, when you making an array out of an object that you may not change the initial object, or you don't want to make any changes in the object itself, you probably go with instance because all the objects will be reference. And for the array count, obviously when you're going to make a wall, you're actually dealing with a two-dimensional array. One dimension will go along the y direction in my case, and another will go along the z direction. So here I have to set the second value of the array to something greater than 1. Let's start with 10. So here we're going to have a 10 by 10 unit array. We press on create, and then after the parametric array settings pops up, as you can notice here, I have only the transform category in a property list, and there is no object category. The reason is that I arrayed in instance. So obviously when all the objects are instance in 3D Max, you can't change them. Now let's set up the Y position first. I'll choose Y, and then here for the controller we choose the linear controller from the library. Once you put the controller, the array updates, and by default linear controller is using both dimensions of our array, which is not correct here. In our case, we just want to array in one direction, so we have to check only one dimension. The other will control with another controller. So let's uncheck the second dimension, and then remember that the Y position is the first dimension of our array. Update the array first. I'm going to update it. The second thing that you need to set is the incremental option. If you choose the incremental, later you can add the items at the end of the array. So when you increase the number of items, the pattern won't change. The pattern will continue the logic. Because the array tries to keep the distance between the blocks. That's what we want, because we don't want to change this distance. Now let's set up the Z position. Here we are finished, and then we go there. And for the Z position, I also want another linear controller. This time we're going to choose the second dimension, so we uncheck the first dimension. This way we are controlling the first dimension of array, the Y position with first dimension of array, and the second dimension goes to Z position. this is also in incremental mode, and we just need to update the array. Here I press F4 to see the box. I can see with edges. And now what we need to do is to move every other row in Y direction, so we can get this brick wall looking effect, or so-called staggered wall, or the running bond effect. To do that, you have to go to the Y position, of course, and you have to look for the first dimension offset, since our array is in first dimension. I'm going to check this auto update box, and then I'm going to try to change this value and see what's happening. As you can see, when you set the first dimension offset to 1, the entire array move 1 unit. So that means this box, which it used to be on top of the first box, it now shifts 1 unit to the left, which is toward the y-axis. So what does it mean? That means I need to change this value for every other row by 0.5 units. Here is the trick. Now you need to control a controller property by another controller. This is where we actually create subcontrollers. So we click on this button. This is just like Material Editor when you're dealing with different maps inside each other. When you click, the library refresh, and it gives you all the controller that can be assigned to this parameter. What I need is a pattern controller. I drag this pattern controller into the first dimensional offset, and we click on it to see the settings. The pattern works on a 2-dimensional array always, and that means you have to choose the mapping method or the dimensions of the pattern. D1, D2 means the pattern works on an array that is dealing with the first dimension and second dimension. The first value which this controller is giving out as an output is 1. And then when you move to the second column, you get 0. So if I change this to 0.5 and then I press an update, I'm getting a 0.5 offset for each column. But that's not what I want. What I want is I want to push every other row 0.5 unit. So here is the trick. We can rotate the pattern using the button here. We just press on this, and then you can see the first row is 0, and then the next row is 0.5. So let's update the array. And that's what we were looking for. Let me give you another example. Now I will try to do the same thing, but based on a curve. So let's close all this, and I'm going to make a curve. Almost in the same length, and then let's let's make this smooth. Alright, that's fair enough. Now to get our setting back, we need to right click on one of the array member, and then we choose the select array object, and then click on transformations and get the parametric array settings back. Here, instead of Y position, we have to put X and Y position on the curve. So let's choose the Y position and delete the current controller. And then let's go to the property list, check both X and Y position, and then press on the controller button and choose the curve controller. You can easily double click on it, or you can drag it to the controller button. I double click. It asks me if you're going to copy it, or you can use in one instance for both properties. This is happening because we chose two properties. So we need to confirm that either we're going to make unique controller for the two properties which we have chosen, or we want one controller to control both of the properties. In our case, because one of the curve controllers has to give the X position out, another has to give Y position, then obviously we need two individual controllers. So I choose a copy option and then I press OK. Notice that we have two properties and two controllers, but we still can see most of the settings of the curve controller. These settings are actually the common settings that can be set for both controllers at one time. If you like to check when you have two controllers, the best way is just to click on the property and then see the controller name. Here is the curve controller 001. And if I choose the second one, I can see this is a different controller. And when you press on deselect, the program shows only the common settings for both controllers. The advantage of this is that you can set the parameters of two or multiple controllers at the same time. So here, because X and Y, they're going to follow this curve, I can just pick the curve using pick button, and the line 001 goes to both controllers. But when you want to set the output, you have to be careful that you need to select only one. So I click on X position and then I check the X component. The same for Y position. I select the one position, make sure you're setting the parameter of the curve controller 002, and then change the component to Y, because the Y position of this curve goes to Y position of the box. Now all you need to do is now updating all the controllers. The box didn't rotate, and that's because we still have not set any rotation property. So I'm going to uncheck and I'm going to go under rotation. The rotation is in XY plane and it's around the z-axis, so we need to set the z rotation of the box. So I'm checking this, and then I will use the curve controller again with double click, and then I will pick the line, and everything else is automatically set. You can see that output is rotation and the Z component has been selected. So we just need to press update. And the first item is not, sometimes it doesn't follow the curve because there is no rotation value at the beginning of the curve. Just to fix that, you can set the end offset slightly above the 0. I will set it 1.01 and then I'll press update. Now it's fixed. Okay, now we need to make our pattern. I'm going to check all these curve controllers, but the property that they have curve controller on them. Let's check this auto update and then change the local offset. As you can see, the entire array moves along the curve. Notice that the offset unit must be an array unit. 1 unit means 1 block. And then 0.5 means half block, basically. So let's do our pattern on this local offset. So I click on this. Now, since we have made this pattern before, we don't need to make it again. We go from the source, we choose the scene, and it gives us all the controller that already we have made in this max file. And this is our pattern controller. We can drag it here, local offset. Again, it asks for copy or instance. Since all these curve controllers has to follow the exact same pattern, we have to choose instance. And then we press OK. Let's update all the controllers again. The only thing you need to do is you need to add a little bit more items in first dimension, so you get it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something, and I'm looking forward to your comments.